Hello, welcome to Leaders and Legends podcast. This is the place where we inspire business owners to find their leadership skills and to inspire and aspire other individuals who are thinking about business ownership to kind of take that leap and try it out. The main goal is to build that web of economic activity around themselves, their family, and their community. Today, I have with me David Guerrero, and why he's here, well, you're about to find out. David, how are you doing today?
I'm good, sir. Thanks for having me, KB. Really stoked, really excited to be here, man.
Man, this has been awesome. We've been talking a little bit on LinkedIn, right? Going
Yep.
back and forth for a little while. And your story is, I would have to say, amazing. Start there. All right. And it definitely goes as far south as you can possibly can. You come back.
Yeah.
And so I'm just very excited to kind of like hear the whole deal. So
Awesome.
let's start with your passion in your business. Like, what is your current deal?
Yeah. So I do a lot right now. I work as a business analyst supervisor for Nelnet Diversified Services, and I've been there 17 years, going on 18 this December. And we support a bunch or shared service. A bunch of different business lines. Officially, we have like kind of some programming language and quality control reports that we own, but unofficially, we kind of do the tour around the organization and help teams that are outside of our scope and stuff like that to create more efficiencies, automation, skill building, motivation, and then also kind of I'm an artist, and so I have a whole like design and graffiti business that I do, kind of professional gigs, logo work, do stuff for kids' bedrooms, and I make merchandise, I make clothing, and so I got a whole bunch of stuff going on in that art space too.
So you just put two words together that kind of is interesting. Professional graffiti.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's yeah. We'll get into the graffiti, but like the professional part is that like everything with time, KB, graffiti has become a little bit more socially acceptable. People, I think that forever people have always liked it and admired it. You stop at the train and you see all the art on the freight cars and you're like, man, that looks pretty sweet. But everybody acknowledges that it's still illegal in most places without a permit. And so I think everybody's always really liked it, but one of those things where it's like I like it, but from a distance, like it's cool, but I don't, I still think it's vandalism or whatever, So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I found it interesting. I lived in Germany for a little while, and graffiti there is a big thing. Like it is nearly everywhere outside of the city square type of thing. And at first, it kind of threw me off because I'm used to graffiti being like you're now entering the bad place. Right?
Yeah.
The more graffiti, the worse it's going to get, right? Type of thing. It was kind of a gateway. But in Germany, it was so prevalent that it wasn't designating a bad place or a good place, right? It was more of the local culture in a way. Subculture that was representing itself amidst the mainstream culture at the same time. Right? Not separate from, but a part of.
For sure. And I think it's a big graffiti is really representative of so many movements in overseas, like socio-political, just like human rights stuff. Like most of that stuff comes with a ton of great intent and expression, man. It's amazing. Amazing.
So let's get into some of your what we call the origin story.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Sure. So where did you come from, and how did that piece lead to where you are today?
Man, this is awesome. Yeah. This will be fun. All right. So I grew up in Long Beach, California, born and raised. My parents split up when I was about 8. And so with that came a little bit of like I was living with my mom and between both my parents. My dad was trying to get citizenship at the time, so he couldn't even share custody of me and stuff. So I kind of had to hang out with my mom. And my mom, she was we were struggling to, financially, places to live and that kind of stuff. So I lived kind of all over. Born and raised in Long Beach, but I lived in a bunch of cities all around LA County. And I kind of found myself around the summer of sixth grade. I was living with my mom and my younger siblings. We were living in a motel in Norwalk, California called the Saddleback Inn. Man, it was crazy. We lived in a motel. And that's a whole other culture unto itself. We'll talk about that some other time. But so I started school in Norwalk, and I wasn't from Norwalk. Now, if anybody knows anything about Southern California, where you from doesn't always mean what city are you from or where were you born. Where are you from is kind of like a where are you from, like what neighborhood are you from, what neighborhood do you live in. And so I was a kid, but even though I was a kid, we were all kind of operating a couple years ahead of time just because we were all street kids and stuff. We all just kind of did our own thing. And so I moved to Norwalk and immediately kind of faced a little bit of like standoffish, treatment from people that because I wasn't from there. They knew I was from somewhere else. And I made friends with a guy. I won't say his real name, but he'd go by the name Rookie. And he had just moved there from South Central Los Angeles with his mom. And we were both kind of outcasts, outliers, and so he was already writing graffiti. And I kind of just caught a glimpse of it one day. He had a black book in his backpack, and he had wrote something down in like a notebook. And I said, "Hey, man, that thing looks like it's full of graffiti. Can I check that out?" And he's like, "Yeah." He showed me, and then like immediately I was kind of like, "Wow." I was like, I definitely wanted to be a part of it. I'd been exposed to a bunch of it just because I lived on the east side of Long Beach, and the graffiti, like you said, about Germany, graffiti was everywhere. And so, I was drawn to it right away. And so, him and I started working together. He started kind of mentoring me. So then we started, kind of doing missions, just us two, the bad kids, man. Getting going on graffiti missions, sketching, all that stuff. So in that next school year.
And that's the way. And that's you. So you got started at what age?
I was 12. Sorry,
Well,
yeah, I was 12.
all right.
I was 12. And here's the thing. That's that's not all that uncommon. Actually, most of my friends all started when I did and stuff too. So, so that summer, I had after school, like I went halfway through that sixth grade school year, and then we moved up north. No, I did finish sixth grade. Then we moved up north that summer, right before school started, and I was living in the Bay Area in Concord, California. Not from there, I'd never been there, anything like that. And I kind of ran into the same deal in middle school where like I was getting kind of, but I was this was super escalated. I was getting like jumped and beat up and rat packed all the time and stuff. And I didn't really nothing I could do about it. I was there by myself. And so I stood for myself, defended myself, kind of did that part, earned that reputation as being scrappy enough and not afraid. So that was dope. But I wanted a way to like combat it. Like, and that's kind of what we're going to get into with like this leadership stuff. I wanted a way to like stop it. Like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I shouldn't have to. There's got to be something that I can do about it. And that's what I told myself, right? It's crazy. And so, and then there was like 12 dudes on a rotation that were just always beating me up and like kind of, it was rough. It was rough first few weeks of school. And then so one day I just said, you know what? I'm gonna start offering to write on people's peachy folders and their like books, their textbooks and stuff. We would cover a textbook like brown paper bags back in the day.
And I was like, we'll pause for those that know. Brown paper bags protect books.
Yeah, they do, and it's a great surface to wreck with a bunch of graffiti. So, so I remember, and I remember the kid that I actually first talked to about it. His name was just kid named Barry, and I was like, "Hey man, can I tag up your book?" And at the time, I'm not saying graffiti was everywhere. It's in the Bay Area too. It supersedes. I was born in '78. It's been around longer than that. But so he didn't really get it. He was like, "Well, you want to tag up my book?" I said, "Let me just take a look at it." And so he gave me his book, and I just kind of threw a bunch of hand styles on there and drew some like block letters of his name. And that day at lunch, I was swarmed by kids that all brought me their books and their folders and their backpacks. Like, to an extent, I was getting sent home with people's belongings to take home. Yeah. And tag them up. And so KB, I'll tell you this. I don't know how anybody interpreted that, but that next day, I was like an overnight celebrity in my school, man. It was crazy. And as a result, I was able to just shut down all that bullying and all that like violence, man. Like I never even got approached about anything again, except for somebody being like stoked that I would write on their book, or like, hey man, even like crazy stuff. Like my mom had, like, I remember one time, those old like accordion type folders that people put like envelopes and stuff in. I remember this dude was like, my mom wants to know if you'll write her name all over. I'm like, hey man, I got that, So I kind of realized right there that like, there's a pretty frequent saying among graffiti writers and stuff. There's like a graffiti saved my life, and without exaggerating, I believe that, man. I think it took me to a place where like I was able to like really kind of curb problems I was dealing with, because some people maybe they'll just retreat, man. I'll avoid that hallway, or I'm going to tell my mom I don't feel like going to school today, and I don't know. It's a wiring thing likely with me, man, but I wanted to deal with it. Like, nah, I'm not letting this go, man. I'm dealing with this. I'm gonna make sure these dudes know who I am. I don't care if it's just me. So that was my that was my intro into like making, get into graffiti. Then I moved back to Southern California, 7th grade year, towards the end of 7th grade year. And then I was still writing graph and stuff, and then I met some friends in school. They were writers and stuff too. We just kind of sniffed each other out, and so and then they were starting a crew really early, and they were like, hey, we're in the early stages of starting like a graffiti crew. You're really, and I'm really gung-ho, and I'm like always kind of a down dude. I've always been kind of brave and stuff, and they're like, we really kind of like what you do, man, and we'd love to like put you on our crew. And I was like, yeah, because I needed the weight behind me anyways. I was by myself, and I was like, and when I say by myself, like I was back in my hometown, but in a situation where you're doing anything to do with the streets or anything like KB, having people with you is a good idea. You know what I mean? I was still kind of operating solo in graffiti, and then these guys invited me to join a crew, and I did, and so and one of the best things about it is that a lot of the founders of the crew were quite a bit older than me, 5, 6 years older than me. And so I was learning from guys that had been doing it for a lot longer than I had. And what that in that environment could be like, there's this thing that you've probably heard, and I don't how you feel about it. I don't care how you feel about that type of thing. But for me, I hear this thing that's called fake it till you make it. I don't believe in that. I believe in owning what you don't know. Because in a situation like anything to do with like street politics or anything like that, you're gonna need to be what you say you are. Like there's no
level
running from that.
Authenticity needs to be maxed out.
That's right. 100%. You get it. So you can't say you're something and not be it, because you'll be found out pretty quick. And so one of the best approaches when you're learning how to write graffiti, there's some terminology in graffiti called toy, and that's for somebody that's new, not very good, not very skilled. So we all started out as toys. And but me owning that, kind of being vulnerable, they knew and I remember one of the talks I had early was like, well, we didn't invite you, to join this crew because we thought you were the best writer, but we thought you would be like the best representative of us because you're so down and so like kind of you're so motivated. And that was the first time I'd ever really kind of heard anything put to me that way. I kind of thought it was all about being tough and like, being able to withstand. And they're like, nah, you just seem like you've got a lot of energy, man. And you're really relentless about learning, and you're really open to learning, and you're helping other people that wouldn't teach people what you learn. And so, yeah, sorry, I went monologuing kind of crazy there, man. But
no, that was really good, because like what I'm hearing out of that is, tagging and graffiti is its not just own art form, right? And it's its own its own culture in a sense, right? And there's lots of rules, like that's what makes a culture, right? What makes the 100%. Culture? So humans are weird, right? Humans, they don't really like being alone, and if there are, they're like very one-offs. We like to organize, and we always organize under a similar premise, right? And inside those organizations, one of the very first things that regardless whether they talk about joining the military, joining a gang, it's kind of the same, joining, right, joining a country,
100%.
whatever, right, joining a job, you know, it's less about. I mean, if you can do the minimum, that's cool. Right? Like, can you do at least like the minimum effort of what's required? What I find is interesting in your story is you put it as that you're always down, and I'm hearing that you're committed.
Yes. Oh man. Yeah. See, you're more eloquently saying these things than I am. Man. That's exactly right. And that's and you know, passion and commitment might not be on the skills totem pole, but I can guarantee you a ton of skills are amassed because you have those things. You know what I mean? Like, you're passionate and committed. Yeah,
absolutely. And I also kind of heard that that energy, right? Like you vibed with them, right? So there's that team cohesion piece, right? That you need, right? Because if you can't vibe with a person, it doesn't matter how good you are.
Doesn't matter,
right? You're out. And I bet, and you could tell me how far off I am on this, but as your story progresses, you end up being more of a mentor over time.
Man, you called it. You're in my head. Yeah, 100%. And because I think I've always been so stoked and appreciative on people that put their time into me, KB. You know what I mean? I'm already drawn to people. So like when somebody gives me that energy and that focus and kind of that care, like, you know, it's my duty to pay that forward, man. You know, like, hey, somebody showed me and it changed my life. Let me show you. Hopefully I change yours, you know? And so that's always kind of been, 100%, man. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to take a tactical pause a little bit on and talk about just for a minute to kind of like, this is like somebody talking about quantum physics, right? We need to take a pause and get everybody educated, right?
Yeah.
What is graffiti?
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know that I've ever been asked that question there, but I do think it's an artistic expression that has everything to do with like this. So in graffiti, so maybe I'll walk you through some of the like the fundamentals. So fundamentally, if you're a graffiti writer, so there's graffiti artists, piecers, bombers. I'm a graffiti writer, like I'm a lettering artist, is what I've always been as. And so when you start writing graffiti, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to establish your handle, and that's like what you write for, write in graffiti. And now the handle itself is whatever and that's the part that's so amazing and so makes everything so creative. Is that say it's a sequence of letters that you can really write well. Like say, like my first graffiti handle ever was motion, like just spelled like the word M-O-T-I-O-N, motion. And I just liked how the words came together. Like I just loved it. I was like, man, I'm so good at these, and then so that helped my learning curve too, because you establish an actual like a tag, like something that's like a John Hancock, like a signature. You know what I mean? Like these are my letters. You'll know this was me. You'll know I was here.
Right. And amongst the community, they know it was you. I mean, I may not be able to know who's who, but inside the community, because of the artistry and the styles of it, like it's unique, right? Each person's going to have a unique way of doing
everybody. Perfect. Yep. 100%. And so so you get your handle down and then you start, depending on where you're at, in a sense, like a lot of people will spend a lot of time in sketchbooks and kind of black booking, we call black booking, where you just practice. And that's the part that I think that might not be super understood by anybody uninitiated, in the sense that, like, we talk about, business strategy. We had strategies in graffiti and stuff too, like I would ride. So like there was a blue line, Metro Blue Line train that started in 1991 in my hometown that went from the promenade in downtown Long Beach to the Union Station in Los Angeles. And I used to take that train. It was a 60-minute ride between Long Beach and LA. And between that, you're driving through Compton, Huntington Park, all these different cities, and I would get on the train and just ride the train and look at graph and like look at spots that were like, oh man, in graffiti, another kind of technical spec, there's what's called heaven spots. Heaven is when you climb up on a freeway sign or above a building or a billboard. That's called a heaven spot, where you'll go up high and kind of bomb your name up there or throw a piece up there and stuff. So, but I would just sit on the train and ride it back and forth, and I would just check out everybody's work, and like,
And
there was people just
to be specific.
Yeah.
You said ride the train.
Yeah.
Am I envisioning you riding inside the train?
I'm in the train. Yeah. I've been trying inside the train.
Just checking. Just checking. Are you hoboing it?
No, I had my, and it's an actual commuter train, like a subway. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't say that. So
just gonna get clarity, right?
But I've seen that too, And so like I would ride the train and kind of check out all the stuff, and then I would go home and I would emulate some of the stuff I saw, before I was learning and stuff.
Okay.
And that's another thing you really can't do.
Yeah.
Publicly. You can be inspired by styles, but there's like a thing that's called biting, where like, I'll just blatantly steal your signature, KB, and use it as mine, type of thing. So you want to be careful. You want to be inspired, but you don't want to be biting. And so that was like kind of, I would go home and kind of just sketch and doodle and stuff, and until I got my own flavor, my own sauce together.
Yeah. So all right. So then, as a writer, does that directly translate into font artistry?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because I can, I do, I do a lot of commission work and stuff like that. So I do a lot of graffiti style, typeface font work, in design platforms, and then I also, I'm calligraphist, graffiti or cursive. I do a little bit of everything. Yep.
Okay, because it's an interesting, right? So because people take, maybe not people, right? I just say me, and if people resonate, then you're the people I'm talking about. The uninitiated, right?
Uninitiated, that's right.
Right, the uninitiated. And when I see, graffiti, I see, obviously, there's some, depending on how good it is, right? Some of it's just kind of like looks trashy, right? It's just spray paint. Right. I'm like, all right, there's something there, right? But it looks like you just kind of did a thing and you moved on, right? But then some of it is like, well, that took some time. Like, you can tell, like that took some time. Like that's pretty good. Like, yeah, okay. And then especially like stopped at there's a spot in Bossier City, Louisiana, right, where I lived prior to up here in Omaha. Train track straight through, right, and it would block my road out of my neighborhood now and then. And so we just sit there watching the cars go by, and most of them had graffiti right on them of some sorts, and quite often there was like, oh shit, like it just pops out, like wow, like multicolor, huge sometimes, like wow. Like, that's dedication. That's a couple cans of paint like happening.
For sure. Absolutely.
So that's where you started, but I get a sense that from where that's like skill set, we'll put the skill set piece started, but that I don't get a sense though that there's more to the story about your motivation.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I did the we might not have time for it all today, but I kind of did the graph thing for a few years, and then I kind of winded up getting into some heavier street stuff. Had a kid pretty young. I was 15, and and I wasn't ready to have a kid at 15. You know what I mean? And I just the deck was stacked against me. I was pretty unstable as a kid. I didn't have a good. My godmother. She kind of adopted me for a few years there, and was kind of my legal guardian. So I was able to kind of crash at her place for a few years off and on, probably over the course of like 10 years. And so I was super grateful for her support and stuff, but during that time I was just kind of a wild man, I got kind of escalated into, like I said, some street stuff, heavier work, kind of gangbanging and stuff like that. So I did a lot of that. And then, I had a kid, and then I stayed pretty good for a while there with my kid. And then, after it just kind of started going downhill, I started having some problems with her mom. And then, so I kind of started gravitating back towards the streets and kind of being not really doing anything really good with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a few years had passed, and then my godmother, had planned on moving out here, and
Mm-hmm.
she had reached out to me and was like, "Hey, do you want to, maybe she didn't want to get out of Dodge for a little bit and kind of check it out in the Midwest." And um, it took a little convincing because I was, also like how it appears and stuff. Anything to do with, like I said, I mentioned earlier, like street politics and stuff like that. You are held accountable to a certain role and expectations and stuff like that. So like, just bouncing on that activity and like that kind of stuff is could be dangerous type of thing. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
I told her I need to kick it around for a little bit. So I kicked it around, and then I eventually said, yeah, I'll check it out for a couple months, because I had recognized that I needed to get out of trouble. I was like, I need to get off the streets and stuff like that. This isn't really going to do anything for me. So I moved to the Midwest, and probably I noticed pretty early that my energy compared to people my age, I have a pretty irrepressible energy. I'm really, I go after it. And I realized that I was surrounded by a lot of people that had different circumstances than me coming up, or like maybe they had two parents, and they had
Mm-hmm.
cars, and there was a lot of things that I didn't have, when I was a kid, and nothing wrong with that, because that's the life I'm giving my kids and stuff. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm
Right.
setting them
Right.
up for the future.
Right.
But at the time, I remember kind of being a little bit resentful, of like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these guys have all this stuff and I ain't got nothing. And then I was like, how about I had to kind of repurpose the energy that I had for like the streets and graph and all that stuff. I was like, I need to kind of repurpose it, repackage it for the better.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of years in, I had a son here. So I had two kids at that point. I was 19. Um and so I knew that I needed to kind of do something. So I started working like 9 to 5 jobs. I had like a salesman job, and then I said, well, I got this extra time on the days that I'm not doing stuff with my kid. How about I pick up this other job? And so I've
Mm-hmm.
always kind of just done more than I needed to, like kind of always been like this capacity creator for
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'm like, there's a bunch of internet gurus out there, but one guy that kind of breaks it down really good is like Gary Vee. He talks about the
Mm-hmm.
24 hours in a day, and how much time you spend actually working and sleeping, and how much time you probably waste scrolling or watching Netflix, and never really been into a bunch of downtime,
Mm-hmm.
really ever. I've always kind of just been, and it might sound like like I'm just nuts, but I really do get a lot of energy from accomplishment. I really
Mm-hmm.
believe in that being that accomplishment is what keeps my head on straight. And like, I got
Mm-hmm.
kids, grandkids, wife, house, mortgage, all that stuff. And that stuff breaks a lot of people. And I think that keeping the energy up and really trying to go after and accomplish things and have a creative outlet is really what helps with a lot of that stuff, which is
Mm-hmm.
like I said, KB, why I was gravitating to your stuff, because I do think that you're hitting all the cylinders, all the right notes on the mindset stuff that's required to lead actually effectively and live like an actual life versus kind of let life crush you and stuff, man. So,
No, thank you
but
for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, you're welcome. And so that's what I would say is I think the setbacks, I got into some trouble with the law and stuff. Just the setbacks, having a
Mm-hmm.
kid so early, having a really unstable environment, and then not to mention, I was just like to say, I mentioned earlier with like street politics. There's no amount of exaggeration I would ever kind of exhaust on here, man. You're kind of in danger all the time, type of thing when you're
Mm-hmm.
growing up in a spot where like there's a bunch of street violence just everywhere. For the most part, you think civilians are in danger. It's really not the civilians that are, civilians get caught in all kinds of stuff all the time. I'm not saying that that's not a thing, but
Mm-hmm.
like I've always said, like in like kind of with street politics and street gangs and all that stuff, civilians are kind of like a negative point value. You know what I'm saying? If this was a
Right.
game, you're going after the enemy. You're not
Right.
looking
Right.
for
Right. Right.
civilians. You've been in combat before. You know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about, man. So
Yeah.
like, but so a lot of people think that everybody else is in danger. The thing about it is that as dudes that are doing street stuff, we're dangerous to each other. It's
Right. Yeah. You're most dangerous
we're most dangerous. Like
at
we're
that.
looking for each other.
Yeah.
We're looking for each other. It's like
Yeah.
it's a patrol.
Right.
of sorts, man.
Right.
So,
Right.
so yeah, so let me know if did I go too crazy, or let me know if I didn't
No,
answer
that was
what you said.
awesome. Because
Yeah.
like, so when we tap into like deeper motivations,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Things that set us straight.
yep,
Like for me, part of my remotivation from when I was a hellion, was a really bad car accident type of thing, like
yeah,
really bad. And after I survived it, which was the miracle, by the way,
yep, sure.
I realized that I'm going to be dead in 6 months. Like
I love
if
those
I
stories,
continue
though.
this path, this was
Yeah,
the warning shot. I will be
yeah,
dead in 6 months.
yeah, yeah,
And so I need to make a dramatic course change and surrender,
yeah,
right? Because what
yeah,
I'm thinking isn't the whatever this is happening here. This is going one direction,
yep.
and so that's what got me to join the Air Force, right? So my father was in, my grandfather was in, type of thing,
Wow.
right? So there was some family tradition there, of course, but I
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
Halion. I didn't care about stuff like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
But I did need something. I need to abdicate. I need to give up
yep,
my decision process
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I would not have,
That's
because the decisions I'm making aren't going to be the ones.
right. So you and I kind of it sounds a lot like me, KB. It sounds like you repurposed kind of your focus, like your energy. Your
Yes.
energy was going in a dark place. You repackaged it and kind of and pivoted to something better. And that's like what I think I ran into. So like when I had mentioned that I had kind of run into some peers, people that were my age, and I thought, like these kids, they don't want it, man. Like they don't need it.
Mhm.
Maybe that's what they didn't need it. Well, I needed it, man. I was still kind of, I just moved out to the Midwest and I had a kid, and that was really, it was tough, man. Looking back at it, I had two kids in the span of 4 years. I was 15 for one, 19 for another,
Mhm.
and like I I was still a kid, man. So like
Right. Right.
so that responsibility kind of thrusted me into
And
like
you felt that,
I
right?
yeah, yeah.
that was like, okay,
Yep.
left side, right side. This is the new narrow path.
100%, 100%. So
Uh,
that's and so with that, like I looked at it and said, well, nobody's coming to like save you or anything like that. And so
mhm.
I started working, and then I always realized that, like I could probably do a little bit more, so I would
Mhm.
take like a loading dock job at night, while I worked in like kind of a retail job during the day. I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
these guys are hiring 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., 3
You're
nights a
like,
week.
I got time.
I got time. I got time, and I could use the bread. So I was
Yeah.
like, I'll
Yeah.
do it, And
A
but
question
a
for
lot.
you, real quick.
Okay,
Just a
go ahead.
question for
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Did you
yeah, yeah.
feel at that time and period that idle hands would be the devil's playthings too?
Devil's Playground is boredom. Absolutely.
Like
Absolutely.
did
Yeah,
that?
yeah, because that's how people go back to, like, so let's say that you're doing something like, there's a lot of friends, and they go to jail, they get out.
Mhm.
First few weeks they're good, but then they get back into trouble because, like you said, with those idle hands. And I also don't believe that you can get healthy where you got sick, man. Like
Oh,
if you
nice.
if you are in a dark place,
Mhm.
don't stay there.
Yeah,
Don't
write that down. Those two.
yeah, you gotta move, man. You gotta move.
Mhm.
And so like, but moving to the Midwest, and so you being from Louisiana, I don't know,
Well,
I don't
full disclosure, I
yeah.
landed in Louisiana I retired out of the Air Force there.
Oh, okay, okay,
I'm actually from nowhere.
okay. Were you born on a military base?
Technically, yes.
Okay, okay, yeah,
I was
yeah.
born on Wright Pat Air Force Base, Ohio.
Oh, okay,
That's where I grew up, right? And you
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about like shock and awe a little bit.
Culture
I
shock,
ended up
yeah,
going back like 30 years later or whatever.
yeah, yeah,
And I'm driving around trying to find my old house when I was
yeah,
6. And
yeah,
I think I found it. I called my
yeah.
dad. Dad. He goes, yeah. I am at our old address. He goes, oh, really? I go, yeah.
Yeah.
I go, Dad, how poor were we?
Right, right, right.
I was like, he goes, yeah.
Yeah,
We were pretty poor.
that's awesome. That's
I was like,
awesome.
good, because well, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah,
not much has changed, and
right,
and
right.
it was just like I don't have a home, right? I'm from
Yeah,
I'm from everywhere now,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Name a
yeah,
spot, I
yeah.
probably ran through it, But like, I love the like your journey though of knowing that you had to get out, you took an opportunity safely, right, according to the politics of the situation, and get to an entirely different location, and then at least that opens up the choices. And instead of using your downtime to be bored, which would lead to more trouble, you're just like, well, let me put the hands to work because I got a lot of responsibilities anyway, and that kept you out of trouble long enough so that you can build out a new you.
Yeah, and so that's like we talked earlier about achievement. So I remember kind of I had some early thoughts about like so I would get like I'd start like a job or something, KB, and then normally I'd move up pretty quick. You know, I was young, and like I said, my energy's always been pretty irrepressible, but I've always been like polite and enthusiastic and kind. You know, so people have always been down for me, man, and it's been amazing. And so I've always kind of I worked for Albertsons Osco, real quick. So you're familiar with them from down that way. One time there was an area manager that was in our store, and he had a tattoo on his arm, and that I recognized, and just street stuff. And I said, "Hey, man, like I really like that, that tattoo, man. Like I know who you are." And he most people would probably say, don't talk to the area manager, you avoid him. And I'm like, nah, I got to find out why does he have that tattoo? And so his name was Frank, and he was incredible, man. And so like I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, Frank, man, I really like your tattoo, and I know who you are. I know like what you're about, bro." And he smiled at me, and everybody was like, because I had told this other cat that I was going to go talk to him. So I'm going to go talk to Frank because I want to talk to him about that tattoo. And he goes, "Man, I don't know, man." And I was like, "Nah, I'm going to do it." I was kidding, man. So I was like, so I he kind of put his clipboard down and he smiled at me. He said, "Man, what do you know about this tattoo?" And I said, "I just know who you are, dog." And he was like, "That's great, man. Dude, what's your name?" I said, "I'm David." He's like, "David, all right, man." And then after that, I took off like a rocket. Like he immediately kind of, put me in spots to like do more, like not even like he had said to me, "I'm not like, I'm not Nepo babying you, but I'm going to put you in some spots." He told me, "I'm going to put you in some spots to prove yourself because I know that you got it. Like, I know you got a lot of heart and you're a down dude." And I think I was just a little bit different than people he was used to dealing with too, because we had some stuff in common. And so he'd put me in a lot of positions where like I would help with projects, like build out new stores and schematics and stuff. And then eventually that led to me getting promoted, like where I was then I was doing, I was in my early 20s. I had like a pod of stores, all over the place. I was training new leaders, building out, new store layouts and working with people's sales to purchase. And all of that, and KB, I didn't know anything about that stuff before, man. Tonnage reports and buying, and I didn't know anything about that, but I was enthusiastic, man, and like I was down, and I had like all this energy. So I really felt like that. I didn't care that I didn't know it, and you know what? They didn't care that I didn't know it either, man. They were like, "Dude, we really," and then it led me to so many like crazy deals. So like there was the law, and I'm going, man. So just let me know if you need me to stop. So I in 2003 there was the longest grocery like union strike in grocers history, 134 days in Southern California, and everybody knew I was from Southern California. He knew I was from Southern California, and I worked out of the Texas division. And so there was a strike coming up, and he's like, "Hey, we've got a bunch of employees that that have crossed. They're not coming back. We need to hire a bunch of temporary help. We need to get a bunch of people organized to like go out there." So we're management, so we're a non-union. So but so they sent me to California, and and this is something that I was pretty naive to, maybe naive, maybe just overtly brave. But like when they started talking about it, everybody was freaking out. These are all like cats that have been like in, management for, 25 years, dudes that have, were union before the union got busted in that industry and all that stuff, And so they were like, I would never do that. I would never go there. That's so dangerous, and that's so I'm like, what? And but KB, I've been in way more dicey,
Right.
dangerous
Like,
situations.
like for
And
you,
I,
that's just a
yeah.
Tuesday.
That's what I mean. And I didn't, and at the time I wasn't as open about my path as I am now. You know what I mean? Like, so they all thought I was just dumb. Like, this dude's just dumb. And I'm like, I'm not afraid. Plus, you're sending me back to my hometown. Like, I'm going to stay at a hotel on your dime for 4 months, hang out with all my family and my, bummer, like
Yeah.
but so we got there. Yeah. So we got there, and they were like, it was a little crazy. There was a couple things that I didn't really know about unions and picket lines and stuff, and so we got there, and it was like, man, we could use more people to like drive and kind of escort people into the stores. Well, I know some people, so I was back home. So I'm putting my homies on work and stuff, man.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome.
It was awesome. It was great. And that was like 2003. These dudes were making like $20 an hour, and some of these cats had never seen that money ever. You know what I mean? So like 21 years ago, they're making great money for back then, just driving and escorting and kind of providing some security and stuff, and in the process, I got some of these dudes jobs and stuff, so it was like real jobs, actual jobs. And so so that's when I kind of felt like it didn't really matter what I knew or whatnot, or how the minutia of most of these jobs, and I know enough. I don't want to make it sound like I don't know anything. I just like I never really timed what I did on how much I knew. I was like, just don't worry about it. Let's just see what it is. And then I've never been afraid to lead and ask for more. I've never been afraid of doing that. In my current role with Nelnet, I got a team of 5 people right now, and all of them KB just creative fire eaters, like just and just animals down for whatever. Like, you never once heard any of them say, that's not my job. We step in and help all kinds of people that outside of our responsibilities, and they don't care. They're like, yeah, man, no, let's do it. And they see the challenge in it. They see the glory in it, and like pulling out some wins and some stops. So that's kind of where I was. But that all, like I said, kind of going back to the genesis, it all started with graffiti and that guerrilla marketing style, where I'm just out there putting myself out there as a rule, as a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. My lifestyle is to put myself out there, win, lose, or draw. It doesn't matter. You put yourself out there, you do and eventually you're so numb to like critique or things that people say, oh, this is hard. I don't know if I'll be, I don't care. Let's just try it. Let's see what happens. It could work. Who knows? Whatever, like, so, and so like that as a lifestyle and as a focus, putting yourself out there, like I said, guerrilla marketing, getting up, working on hand styles, standing out.
So that's a whole other thing. So I was going to ask you something else. And I got 2 things.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll work in reverse. So first, to all aspiring business owners and current business owners out there who think that the CEO of their company, take a tip, right? Be the lifestyle brand of your company, right? Be the lifestyle brand, because you represent always. Type of thing. Yeah, so I think a lot of people, a lot of like business owners forget that, and they try to not be in a way like, or it's not the business. And there's 2 brands, right? There's a personal brand and there's a business brand. People follow people, not things, facts.
100%.
Right. And so if a person does good things, they'll follow them no matter what they're doing.
I agree with that, and that's because it's a trust. It's a longevity. It's a trust. Right. I've always been able to trust KB to do this, so I'm with him on this. And you probably have some of that with leadership in the military. You had certain COs that you like vibed with, some that you maybe not so much.
So much. So then, okay, so talk about the leadership piece of this, right? So I have some theorems, have some very mathematical-esque ideas about leadership, right? Because I believe a lot of this stuff it's not just a formula, but there are patterns in life, right? There are patterns. And so I want, from your perspective, because you have such a unique upbringing in your leadership skill sets, right? You're developed on the streets, and they grew into, right? They blossomed out of your character, but you had to learn, like, along the way, like how to make it work, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question: would you say, like, do you resonate with this idea that the more responsibility you take, the more you're empowered to fulfill that responsibility? So, like, as you say, I got this, suddenly people follow you to go do it.
Yep. Because I'm not, if you think about it in business, especially now, you can stand to lose as a business owner. You can stand to lose it all, with bad decisions and things like that. But we're talking about like tasks, and like everything you do in your business is a task. So let's just say you design a new website, and let's say that people are buying things off your website, but for whatever reason, those sales are, the transactions aren't going through. Well, did you fail at creating the website, or did you just fail a part of creating the website? So the next day you're going to go in, you're going to say, oh, I'm going to figure out why it's not transacting these payments. You're going to figure it out. You're going to go to YouTube. You're going to go to Chat GPT. You're going to go and you're going to figure it out. And then KB, now the payments go through. Bro, did you fail? No, you didn't fail, man. You fixed an obstacle, a small obstacle, and depending on what time of day, something like that. And that's just a widget. That's just a hypothetical. But depending on the time of day, that might not have affected very many people, man. And then you send out, you do some outreach and say, hey, I noticed you were shopping. Is there any way that I can call you back? Here's 10% off. I know that your payments didn't go through before we fix that issue.
There is always a solution. Just keep moving forward through it.
Yeah.
Right?
And so
I love that.
In business, and especially like in a situation like where we're dealing with, the stuff that we deal with in terms of the quality control and regulatory kind of, monitoring and stuff, you do, the margin for error is pretty small. You don't want to have a bunch of bad data out there, especially when it's facing your entities and your customers. But that's what we test for, and that's why we do things internally and within the team before we release an MVP or something that is gonna, and that's technically why we do MVPs anyways, right? So like if you
minimum viable product.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's IT sales. You make a watch, and you can only, right now it's easy to produce the watch in blue, but you'd love to make other colors later. Well, let's just release the blue one for now, just to get it out to the market, and then we'll work on the other iterations in design down the road. So like the thing that with failure is just that, like, failure is I think it only really legit exists when you just quit. Like, I'm not trying that again. That's it. Right. Because you're going to get there. Where what did I think Tony Robbins said? Where focus goes, energy flows. Like, where if that's what you want the outcome to be, that this thing is functional, you'll get there.
Just keep hammering the nails.
That's it.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot for this next.
Sure.
And before I do, I just want to let the audience know that's listening to this. Like, listen to what he's saying about the MVP piece, and AKA, yes, you may not have the perfect product you're looking for to make, but it's good enough that somebody's willing to buy. Maybe you don't know the product you need to build.
There you go.
Right? And just maybe the MVP will get you to where you actually need to be. So I'm just saying that as a thing, right? Lessons learned on my end a couple hundred times, still working on it. But to shift gears, right? So I want you to just exercise about future, right? And limitlessness. If you didn't have any restrictions, you had infinite flow, time, energy, money, resources, type of thing, and you had total freedom of time as well, which is the most important part. What cause or thing, however you want to frame it, would you support, and like, how would you support it, and why?
Sure. Great question. Yeah, great question. So coming from like kind of a deficit of like love and like kind of parental structure, I'm a huge, massive product of mentoring people that weren't my family, didn't owe me anything, man. And they all, even like when I moved to the Midwest, you know, I don't care what anybody says, man. You don't have to have any congruency in your background for people to like inspire you and motivate you. I've learned so much from business owners and farmers and like people that I would never ever have any proximity to in the hood. Never, man. And I've learned so much, and that's why I've been able to kind of merge where I started with where I am. So I would say a cause that I'm really into, and I perform my versions of mentoring within my organization. I'm a treasurer for the Unidos resource group, associate resource group in Nelnet. I mentor around our company through our mentorship program at NDS. So I'm a fanatic. I'm a maniac for mentoring. So if I could set a cause up, I'd set up like, so I think that a lot of mentoring, and this isn't against the organizations that provide it. I understand that they need to have their checks and balances in place, but I think mentoring is light, in my opinion. Some of the stuff that's set up today is light. Like you can't, there's a lot, I agree there's kids and stuff like that, so boundaries are absolutely, 100% necessary. But like, you vet your mentors, and then you let them kind of let the kid be a part of their like life. So if you own a business, or you're like you're a really successful person, a successful 9-to-5 or a software developer or whatever, that kid should have access to see that, like, and especially I would say criteria that I'd look for is somebody that has a background similar to mine. Like so, when I was a kid and we were sitting in the clink and stuff, people, and nothing against any organized religion like that, but they would come in and talk to us and it didn't resonate with us. We're like, whatever. But the Victory Outreach program in California, which is a bunch of rehabilitated drug addicts and gangbangers and stuff, they would get out of prison and they would join this fellowship with the Victory Outreach. And they all had the same mental makeup and background as we did, man, when we were sitting in juvie and stuff. And they would come and talk to us. And man, like, you saw a huge shift in like from people that didn't, more of the uninitiated, the regular kind of people that were giving us their time, and it was really noble and super just grateful for those people, but they couldn't tell us any stories that we could identify with. But then the Victory Outreach, the Victory Outreach people came in, and that was, because they were like us, man. They were from the hood, they're from the streets and stuff, And so
is that what's happened? So what is here that's like that?
You mean here, like physically here?
Physically here, like
so we've got like the Teammates program here in Lincoln that started, I think, with the University of Nebraska. Like Tom Osborne started and made his, like, not made him, but like encouraged his players to mentor kids in school up to high school age and stuff like that. Something similar like that. That's out there. And
what would you do though?
I don't want to lie like I know, but I don't. There might be a couple more other ones out there. And then you're gonna be like, what's stopping you from starting one, David? And then now I gotta
look. I wasn't saying it. I was curious of what, like, have you been able to? So it sounds like to me that mentoring kids, right? Giving them an opportunity to see that there is a path forward, because at that age it's so hard to see anything regardless. But to see that, especially when you're in a dark spot, to see that there is some light out there, right? And that somebody who's traveled that path specifically, like, you can make it too, right? That's the lesson of the human species.
Right?
For
sure.
The great storytelling is all about saying, oh wow, if they can do it, then I can do it.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is like the thing about what I think sets people with my early circumstances apart, is that I went through so much so early, KB. Like I said, like I went and so, but starting in graffiti, that is nothing but a proving ground. That's all it is. And so like when you're a kid, you're 12 and 13, like there was no soft, like, we had our mentors and people that were soft on us, but I'm going to tell you a real quick one, and I promise we'll be done. And I used to have a beeper that I could call my pager and leave myself a voicemail in the early 90s. You probably remember that.
Yep.
Maybe I don't want to say I think I'm older than you, but don't. So anyways, that. So
nice.
So we used to have this like process in my first graph crew where we would insult each other like as brutally as possible. So I remember, and that was just like, that was to motivate you. We all accepted it, that we all knew like that's what this was. But I used to call the voicemail on my pager. I would stop at like a payphone, and I would leave myself, because I would think of something really like funny and dope and disgusting, and I would call myself and leave myself a voicemail so that next time I see homeboy, I'm lighting him up like with just the most insulting stuff I can think of. And like that was, and like I think about, like I got an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old in my house, you know, my youngest kids. I think about them going through it, not much older than not much younger than I was. They could, and I, you know, they just don't. That would be devastating to them. Not because they're less than I was, but because that's not life for them. You know,
Right.
you can get used to anything. You can get used to anything. But yeah, so like it was just a proving ground, and so that would be my goal. Would be to tell kids, you know, because I used to think even early on in my career at Nelnet, I used to think that my background and kind of maybe starting late on the legit stuff was a setback. Little did I know that like my creativity and my actual bravery. I've never been afraid. I'm undaunted by failure, man. And so those things actually gave me this crazy like unidirectional advantage where that like I could dial it back. Most people can't dial it up, bro. So like, so yeah, I felt like I was at it, but it took me forever to realize that. It took me forever to realize that. Because I always looked at it like, man, you know, like maybe I feel out of place because I'm not ready, but maybe I felt out of place because I was ahead. And it felt weird talking about things that maybe I was past.
It's very funny you say that. I can tell you, being a vet and talking to lots of vets that transition out, they feel the same way.
I bet.
Because they've been in this closed system, right, for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And when they come into the real world, right, everybody's speaking a different language.
Civilized, right, man. Just slow down.
And suddenly people feel threatened. Like, what do you feel threatened? Like, I'm not doing anything, but suddenly people feel threatened. And like, I might as well have like tattoos across my face sometimes, you know, because that's just kind of like the way. And I think a lot of vets have struggled. Like, a lot of my friends, in fact, I turned down a job. They offered me a job like within weeks of me retiring, and I was like, I go, I appreciate, but here's the thing: I have 7 friends that just retired. They're all now on their 5th job because they can't stop knife handing people. Because they are not decompressed from this other world that doesn't work in this other place they call the civilian life, right? And I told them, I was like, I need more time. And my recruiter, she's like, you know what? I really appreciate that. Thank you. We'll keep you on the list. We'll call you back in 6 months. Let us know how you're doing, right? I told her, it's like, look, I'm either going to be one of 2 ways. I'm either going to be like the Big Lebowski in a bathrobe drinking White Russian. Right?
That sounds awesome.
Right? Or, right, I'm going to get ambitious. And if I'm ready to be ambitious, that would be the time. And sure enough, that's when the call came. So, no, I it's interesting just some of the words you're saying about not feeling enough when you've actually had quite a bit of experiences that most people have never have had in the, we'll call it the mainstream version of American life.
Yeah, I needed my wife to kind of break that down for me, KB, because like, you know, there's all kinds of courtesies out there, people that, you know, acquaintances, work, you know, peers, friends. But she told me straight up, she's like, do you not get it, dude? I'm like, what? She's like, you are like different, man, and you need to embrace it. You need to stop hating yourself for it. And I was like, you sure? And she's like, yeah, because I had told her in 2019 I was going through a little bit of burnout. I was professionally kind of, you know, and so that's when I started. Like I've always doodled and like wrote graphs, but I was like, I wonder if anybody will buy this stuff. And so I just started doodling and painting again. And no lie, man, the creative outlet has changed me. Like I'm a completely different person now.
Like you tap back into that core.
Like it's crazy how many times, KB, that graffiti has saved my life, man.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. I know I have some websites to post right? That's going to be in the description of this.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We are on video at the moment. Do you happen to have anything you can show? What's that on the back? What's behind you?
Sure. Yeah. I'm really proud of that one, man. Let's see.
Stay the course.
Yeah. Stay the course and really walk it like I talk it, KB. That's me, bro. All day, man. That's who I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks.
And I can see why people were like, "Hey, sign this too." And so, do you currently do so shifting a little bit back to kind of some business things,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
So, because they see that you are like, what is your like real short? Like, what's your process? So, if I go, "Hey, look, my moniker, right, is KB, right?
Yep.
Like, I've chosen that to be my handle,
Sure.
right, type of thing." But I want something a little bit more fancier that I can put on a seal, on a ring, on a shirt, right? Something.
Yeah.
What's your process to take that, convert it, and then so that I could use it?
Great question.
By the way, do you do that?
Yeah. No, I do that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a commissioned artist, so most of my time is spent in the design space. I like to bend time to my will in this life. It's like my life's goal, but large scale paint and trying to work and all this dad stuff and all this other stuff is tough, so, and if they cut the check big, okay, fine, I'll make it, but yeah, my process is like, I got a link that you said I gave it to you, and so I do have commission requests that come through. Somebody kind of gives me the wireframe, idea, like, hey, I do things different. I do logos, I do vinyl stickers, I do wall decals. People will ask me to draw them a tattoo and stuff like that. So it kind of just, they tell me what they're looking for, and then they know like if they're reaching out to me, they've seen my style, they know what I do. And so normally my process is to say, what are you looking for? You're looking for something that's like more typeface, kind of predetermined font, or do you want something more graffiti style? You're looking for calligraphy, Old English, cursive, anything like that. And the ones, and this is for everybody that's ever said this, and this, I guess when they say whatever you think is best, I hate that. Tell me what you want. So,
at least provide a sketch, right? Do a doodle so it makes sense.
Yeah,
and so, go from there. Does the what you call it? Do you art it out by hand first? Do you go to digital? Do you do digital? Do you use iPad with a fancy pen?
I got a bunch of tools. So I do a lot of design platform stuff. Adobe, Photoshop. Illustrator.
So it gets so it does get technical at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
And but I wanted to do that. I wanted to do that, KB, because like I knew that was the way we talk about business and stuff like that. I knew that was the way that I could reach the broadest audience, getting into print, being able to turn logos quick, like, don't get me wrong, there's a ton of money and stuff in piecing up somebody's garage and large scale paint work. There is, man, there's a ton of money in that. There's also materials and travel time and all that stuff, and so I started realizing that when I started doing it again, and I started kind of painting and making actual art. People were like, during COVID, people were wanting a lot of art in their backgrounds, because they're on like Zoom meetings and stuff, and teams. And so I got a lot of work during that time, and I remember like, it was a pretty big influx for a while there, and like I was like starting to like be like, man, you like doodling and drawing and painting and stuff, but do you like it as your job? And so once I started kind of teaching myself the design platforms and that kind of stuff, and I was able to get my work out there in residual, you sell it on a website or what, I started doing that stuff. Then I realized that was a better path for me to manage my time,
right. Make it once, sell it over and over.
Yep, for sure. And then of course with the exception of the commissions, but yep, for sure.
Yeah. Right. So then let's wrap this up a little bit, but I want to be able to make sure that the people who have listened to your story up to this point have an opportunity to work with you, right? Yeah. So run down a list of things you can do for somebody.
Yeah, like I said, I do a lot of logo type work, and I do a lot of personal stuff. Like somebody will say, hey, I want to make a canvas of my son's name in his room, or I want my wife and I have a favorite song. Could you write the lyrics out to the song in graffiti style? And
Mm,
so like a lot of that kind of stuff I do. I make clothing. I mean, I have my own brand of clothing, but like somebody needs like one-off sublimation and that kind of stuff, I can do it in my
mhm,
style. I make like stickers for businesses and stuff. Somebody has a business, they want to promote it. I'll make
mhm.
them, like a bunch of vinyl slaps and stuff like that, man,
So
to
okay,
promote their
so on the
business.
vinyl piece, so is that
Mhm.
like, so let's say, right, KB logo, right? We
Yep.
figure out what that
Yep.
looks like, and then you put it on a vinyl, or do you
Yeah.
and then ship it out, or like
The-
are you the one putting it on the vinyl, or are you just
I,
like you get the design and you work with vendor to,
I design, cut, and print, but
okay,
large scale work. Depending on the size of the order, I'll outsource it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
I got partners for large scale orders
But
and
it's
stuff
good to
too.
know that you can prototype in
Yeah, yeah,
house,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right, to
yeah.
make sure
But
that
and
is
it'll
what it
be
is.
Yep, and that's the best part about it, is that it'll be one of one. You'll be the only one with it.
Yeah,
That's your style. That I made that especially for you. So
right. And I think that's important. Like, because
yeah,
before we talked about like the difference between personal brand and business brand.
business brand, right?
The business brand is good and may change, and you make
Yeah,
start different businesses,
yep,
and each
yep,
of them has a different flavor. But what doesn't change is kind of you.
yep,
And like as you as a person, a
yeah,
business owner, start to define
right,
who you are in this
yep,
universe, you're gonna want to start tightening up
yep,
like how you
for sure.
represent and present
Yeah,
your handle, right? Like who
hmm
you are,
yeah, who
like
you are, man, who you are, right?
and how your tags get out there, aka
Yeah,
your
yeah,
gear
yeah,
and whatnot.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, so in this conversation today, is there anything that we missed that you want to make sure you talk about before we go?
No, I just think that the only thing I would say is, like, for new leaders, I know that's a big part of your audience, KB. I know that. I notice a lot of your material is geared towards people, leading and getting, and getting out of their way so they can lead.
Hmm.
And so I want to make sure I thank you for that, man. I really gravitated towards your stuff. I think we kind of met, just one off, man. I don't think we had any mutual connections or anything like that at the time. Really stoked on your stuff, but I think that with leadership, the one thing you want to do is, yes, you have your duties as a leader. You want to score the associates, you want to monitor their performance and stuff, but it is also your job to motivate and inspire them, bring energy that you would want them to exhibit. You want them, you want your team to be the relentless, irrepressible gangster that you are. That's what you want. You
Hmm.
want people, like I said earlier, my team right now at Nelnet, they are 5 creative, like I said, fire eaters. Like,
Hmm.
we put them in front of all kinds of work that they've never seen, departments they've never worked in, and we just dominate and bring efficiency for people all the time when we're pulled in to help them. On top of doing our own work, man.
Hmm.
So so when I think of that, KB, I think of um, myself, man. There's good people out there right now, KB, that their boss is actually getting in their way. They're
Hmm.
not letting them be creative. I'm requiring creativity. I'm requiring it. You're gonna
Hmm.
be creative. That's the vibe. That's what we do here. So, like, I think that if you lead with some more trust and empathy,
Hmm.
you develop and you let people build skills and you help them be creative and you get them in front of where they need to be, you get them in front of the things that can help them on their journey. That should be a primary focus of any leader. I don't care what you do.
Man, that's amazing, David. This has been an awesome conversation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on, and we definitely got to do this again.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like some more history here,
No, there's more, way
and
more. Yeah,
and I think there's some leadership pathways, right,
yeah.
that are a little bit unorthodox that we can do
100%.
some interesting comparisons to academia and military and different things, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
I think we'll find some interesting cross flow. So I'm excited to have you on again
I want to do that.
and do some deep dives.
I want to do that. I want to do that.
Awesome, David. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, KB. Thanks for everything you're doing on LinkedIn, man. Hey, check out the video on that I posted on mine or his about mindset. That story about the C-130 flight from Qatar to Baghdad. I've watched that thing like 5 times, dude. It's amazing, bro. That story's incredible. You should put that everywhere. That should be everywhere, man. I loved it. I loved it.
I'll repost it just because you said so.
Hey, do it. All right. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, later, man.
Nope.